Hey everybody, welcome to episode 6 of the Gray Havens podcast. My name is Dave Radford. I'll be your host, and I'm in the band The Gray Havens together with my wife, Alicia, and this episode is going to be all about our song, Paradise. It's the 6th track off of our album, Blue Flower, and today we're going to be digging into the story behind the song and highlight a few moments of the writing and recording process. And if that sounds interesting to you, stick around. And without further ado, here we go. Real quick, before we hop into the episode, this will be a bit of an experiment, but we want to try opening up the podcast for listener questions. So there's a link that we put in the show notes where you can click on and be able to send us a voice memo or a recorded message that I don't know if we'll end up inserting the audio of your message into the podcast and then answer it or not, or if we'll just kind of read it. We'll see what happens, but we'd love to get your questions so far, if you have any, and then maybe we'll do a standalone podcast episode answering your questions, or if we'll sprinkle them into future episodes. Not sure how it will work, but if you have questions, we'd love to hear them. Can't guarantee that we're going to answer every single one on the episode, but we'll choose as many as we can fit in. Please include your name, where you're from, and your message or your question. Or if you prefer, you can email us your question at thegrayhavensmusic@gmail.com. Thanks. Okay, for this episode on our song Paradise, we're going to have to rewind the clock back one more time to spring of 2019. Again, we were on tour. I covered this a little bit in episode 1. We were on tour, and while we were looking forward to being off the road, we were fairly exhausted at this point for a number of reasons, but while we were looking forward to being off the road, on the other hand, I was semi-dreading being off the road because I knew that when we got back, I would need to start writing for a new album, and felt like the inspiration tank was fairly empty. And intro being recommended a book, Planet Narnia, which I read. And the reason I want to start that way is because this song, Paradise, came from one of the earliest sketches after I read that book. So at the time, no Surprise by Joy in view. I hadn't even read it yet. No Blue Flower, no anything that in my headspace. What I was trying to do with these sketches was import some of these characteristics that the author was talking about, that Lewis used in his Chronicles of Narnia books, characteristics of planets. Basically, he argues that C.S. Lewis archetypes each of his 7 Chronicles of Narnia books after one of the 7 planets in the medieval planetary system. It's very involved, but I was pretty persuaded and convinced. It's a good read, regardless whether or not you believe the guy was right or not. And in reading that book, I landed on this chapter on the horse and his boy, and Michael Ward argues that Lewis had the planet Mercury in mind when he wrote The Horse and His Boy. And in ancient poetry and myth, the planets were symbolized by gods, and they had different characteristics and attributes. And Mercury was known for lots of different things, but a few that were important for this sketch of the song were, first, Mercury's association with separating and uniting. If you've watched any kind of YouTube videos on this, or maybe you've seen it in person, liquid mercury separates and reunites really easily, and it's actually really fascinating to watch it. And the other characteristics were Mercury's association with the crossroads or important junctures. And finally, speed or a sense of urgency. And there are certainly other attributes that are associated with Mercury, but for this sketch, I didn't use those or have those in mind, those being eloquence, language, speech, thievery was one of them. All of these make their way into the Horse and His Boy. For instance, spoiler alert ahead, Shasta, the main character, is separated from his twin brother at birth, and he's reunited with him at the end of the story. Twins and pairs are also associated with Mercury. I'm going to stop myself before I go too far. You just have to trust me or read the book. I'm going to play you a version of my first sketch here. This is just two pianos, and the vision in my head that I was trying to translate into music was two horses, running across the desert at night. Maybe stars are out, they're in a foreign land and trying to get back home. And this idea of separating and uniting was in mind. So two pianos going, one of them I labeled running piano, and then the other melody part kind of comes out of that. And here, let me just play it for you. Once I read Surprised by Joy and got fascinated with the blue flower, the lyrics that I chose were more in that vein of being separated from the source of joy, the source of longing, and wanting to be reunited with it. And the vocal melody that I chose also sort of separated out from those two pianos as its own idea, and then comes back and unites with the piano that's playing that main melody that you just heard. So I'm going to play that, and we're going to get fairly quickly into the pre-chorus right after that.
Heard my name called like a song, say it's time, coming from somewhere out across the great divide.
Just a quick highlight before the pre-chorus. Later on, we would add these synth otherworldly sounds, kind of like a radio transmission that I really liked. And then here's everything in for the pre-chorus.
Should I run, leave it all, or stay behind? You never know, maybe blue flowers grow on the other side. 'Cause all this time
the lyrics in that pre-chorus are setting up for the question, should I give this another shot at trying to find the source or the origin point of where joy is located? We've talked about, how Lewis has different spells of this reemergence of joy that sets him down into the land of longing, as he calls it again. And I have that in view when I'm writing these lyrics in the pre-chorus. Ultimately, I should say that Lewis's early, vision of what paradise would be would have no association with the God of the Bible. The source that he ultimately locates joy is coming from. And like I said early, it's a real struggle to associate God or the God of the Bible with paradise. How could this, miserly, rule-giving, only rule-enforcing, did you do enough for me today? That kind of a God be associated with paradise. And ultimately, Lewis's more actual, fictionalized version of what God is like is in the character of Aslan. And miserly, rule-giving tyrant isn't the picture that you get at all when you think of Aslan. Any kid that reads that story, or any adult, that's their favorite character. That's the one that they can't wait to enter the story again. And you resonate when Reapy Cheap's heart's desire is to get to Aslan's country, or with Lucy at the end of that story, Voyage of the Dawn Treader. You resonate with her when she says, when she's told she can't come back to Narnia, and this is her last time, and she says, it's not Narnia, it's you. You're the one that we want to be with. And so that Aslan's country, what makes it great and what the appeal to it is that Aslan's there. And in the same way, the biblical view, the view that Lewis finally takes, that view of paradise is only paradise because Jesus is there. The archetype, the one that Aslan is based off of. Aslan is just this, dim shadow copy, of the real thing. And it takes sometimes a long journey to finally arrive at that picture of who God is. But I think Lewis would say that is absolutely the source of where all the longing comes from. And that is coming from Lewis, who, if we know anything about him, he's a longing junkie. Can we call him that? And of course, he goes into the reasons, the specific arguments why he would make that claim. And, he's a fierce logician. You don't get very far in his writings without coming to the realization that you are dealing with an intellectual force. At this point, let's switch gears back to the production of the song and head into the chorus.
'Cause all this time and still I can't get over dreaming of paradise. Just say I'm getting closer, 'cause I'm longing to find.
This is the 6th song on the album out of 12 songs. So by now we had established a musical palette or some kind of sonic DNA that we were working from, so that when we went to arrange this song and future songs, at least we had, what it does basically is once you get into a project, your first stops or the first thing you try is no longer a big blank white page. You have some kind of foundation to build on, sounds that you've already used. How could we repurpose that? How could we bring it in so that there's some kind of semblance of, cohesiveness on the album? And there were a few things that we brought in to this song, things that we had already included in past songs. And I would say that by now on the album, we've established a heavy sort of ingredient of stacked background vocal parts. I mean, background vocals are the entrance, I think, almost to every single song up until this point. Blue Flower starts off with that stacked chamber group of voices. Rhythm of the East has that big O entrance, and Endless Summer is the ooh entrance, where those a cappella voices come in, and then It's Possible is that ah entrance. So BGVs are a heavy part of the album DNA musically so far, and certainly there are other elements too. The album so far has a bit of a world instrument type vibe from time to time. We've used the vocoder a few times. I mean, there's different things that we're going to and seeing if they will work first. And what I'll do is I will highlight the different sounds that we used in this chorus, starting off with the synth bass that's playing these 16th notes. I love whenever we're able to get away with that. And then the tabla is the percussion instrument that we're using on this chorus. And then after that, I will fade things up in voiceover what they are as they enter. Here comes the hammer dulcimer. Ukulele and guitar. Background vocals. Everything else. I'm just going to focus on one more section of the song before I get Alicia here in the studio to get her thoughts. And the bridge section is what I want to focus in on, because to me, really, that lyrically and musically is the heart of the song.
'Cause there's gotta be somewhere, gotta be going that's better than this. Yeah, I only know I gotta keep going to find what I missed.
There's one part of the bridge that I wanted to highlight. It's down in the mix purposefully. Just didn't really have a place for it to be out front and center when it went to mix. But there's this background vocal part that I'm going to highlight. The lyrics are, well, actually, I'll just let you listen to it. But I heard this part in my head and I sent it off to our good friend Joel Russo, who did a lot of the background vocals on It's Possible. And so it's him singing it, me, and Alicia. Here's the part. I'll just kind of feature it and then bring everything else up in the mix like I did in the chorus.
See the starlight on a cold night and the brown skies when the moon goes down. Didn't see it right for a long time. Here tonight, I can find out how. See the starlight on a cold night and the brown skies. Keep going, find what I missed. All this time.
Again, just something that I wanted to highlight real quick because otherwise it gets buried a little bit in the mix. And at this point, I think it'd be a good time to get Alicia here in the studio, get her thoughts before we wrap it up and play through the entirety of Paradise. All right. Once again, we got Alicia in the house, in the studio. Hey. So give us what's your take on this song? What do you remember? What sticks out to you?
This one always was just really intriguing to me. Had very strong visuals connected to it, which mine are probably even different than yours are and different than
what do you mean by
listeners. But like, I just have like really strong images in my mind, or just like more like landscapes. I like just see a really specific landscape. Very Horse and His Boy-esque.
Okay. I was going to ask.
And I knew that I think you called it, did you call it the Shasta song for a while?
Yeah, I did.
So I knew that you had that in mind, but it sounded like leaving Toshbon.
Yeah.
It sounded like, out in the desert plains, and
that's kind of what I was going
for. The starry sky ahead and the mountains in the distance. And so it's cool. That was always a visual. And then you talked a little bit ago about the BGVs in the bridge, buried in the bridge. And I feel like those connect with my, visual a lot, which is fun.
Definitely. What is your favorite part of the song?
Oh, man. I mean, the pianos at the beginning, I just love those. I really like all of the echoey, distant, radio wavy type sounds that ended up coming in. I love so many things. The bridge is just probably one of my favorite moments on the record.
Me too.
It's just very gripping. I think it just has a lot of soul to it.
Yeah.
But it's just really big and beautiful too. And then with those lyrics at the bottom there,
Yeah.
I'm glad you highlighted those. I just think that's really cool too.
Yeah, I wanted to give them their day a little bit.
Yeah, I wish they could have had like a bigger day.
Yeah, me
It's
too.
like their own thing. But
Maybe we'll do it live
we tried
somehow
it.
on
It
tour.
just-
I don't know.
Yeah.
We could always
Yeah, maybe
figure
we
something
could.
out.
It's a shame, like, just because something's really great doesn't mean that it's like the best in that moment or for that song.
Right.
And yeah, that was one of those things, but it's really cool and I'm glad it's in there.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Also, just like to talk a little bit more about BGVs on the record. There's lots of harmony, maybe less than in previous records, but there's then other types of background vocals that we haven't done as much before.
That's true.
And I really like that flavor. And
That's a good point.
I think that this record was the funnest to sing on for me.
Really?
Yeah. And I really liked doing this song with you too. So I don't think we've talked about this a lot yet, but for this record, instead of, going to Ben's studio and getting in the vocal booth and recording all the background vocals to the tracks that Dave had already done, for this one, Dave sang all the vocals. Well, you sang them here.
Yeah.
At our studio.
Yeah.
And then at night, for a lot of these, I was just sitting in a chair.
Yeah, right here.
Right up at the desk and just really like chill and calmly singing the vocals, and you coached me through them, and it was really fun.
Yeah.
To do that together.
Yes.
And this song was particularly fun. It's just like a really, I think, beautiful harmony part.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, as the actual like
totally
part. And I'm not talking about the way I sang it. I'm just like, as a part, it's
my
really,
performance in particular.
Yeah, no, just to clarify, it's just like a pretty part. And I remember you just had me sing it over and over again because you wanted to pull more and more ache out of it, because the song is such a song of longing.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, it was just,
that was our
really
nightly
cool
routine for a while.
Yes. Which was fun.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a lot of late nights singing, but
yeah, I think our son
really
Simon
fun.
is calling for you. Maybe that's a good place to end it. But I always like getting your takes and doing the debrief together, because I always remember things that I didn't before. So thanks for chiming in on this one, and we'll see you for the next one.
Sounds great.
All right, that's where we're going to leave things off today. Real quick, just a reminder, if you do have a question that you want to submit, there's a link in the show notes that you can visit to send us an audio message, or you can shoot us an email at thegrayhavensmusic@gmail.com, gray with an A, and looking forward to hearing your questions. Thanks so much for listening, guys. If you are enjoying the podcast, give us a follow, leave us a review. Those things help us find new listeners and help spread the word, or you can share it on social media. Anything to help get the word out about the podcast and our music. Okay, I'm going to finish out by playing through the entirety of our song, Paradise. Thanks so much once again for listening.
Heard my name called like a song to say it's time. Coming from somewhere out across the great divide. Should I high. You never know, maybe blue flowers grow on the other side. 'Cause all this time, and still I can't get over dreaming of paradise. Just say I'm getting closer, 'cause I'm longing to find home. Find home. Help me catch that dream. Help me now. Don't say it's gone. And steady that star